Yes, welcome back. My camcorder run out of power. My JVC camcorder. I was reading about slavery and innocent room. Let's finish. But now I'm standing up. Oh, I have a video I need to put public. Dennis video. Good. It's very hot in my living room. Like 30. Now it's 27. So I need to remember to drink. This is early Saturday evening. So let's try finish reading. Yes, I need a minute, 2 minutes to do my reading. That's my tripods. Just read, we only need a few pages. Yes, just read from the top.
Masters are subservient to them. The master will often ask the slave for a favor, and the slave only complies once the master has made it clear that the slave is in charge, beseeching him and calling him Lord, sometimes even a god. 124. These slaves are threatened with numerous punishments for their treachery. Youth always escape the fulfillment of these threats through their wit. 124. Depictions of slaves in Roman comedies can be seen in the work of Plautus and Publius Terentius Afer. Dartmouth associate professor Roberta Stewart has stated that Plautus' plays represent slavery as a complex institution that raised perplexing problems in human relationships involving masters and slaves. 125. Terence added a new element to how slaves were portrayed in his plays, due to his personal background as a former slave. In the work Andrea, slaves are central to the plot. In this play, Simo, or Io the Athenian, wants his son, Pamphilius, to marry one girl, but Pamphilius has his sights set on another. Much of the conflict in this play revolves around schemes with Pamphilius as slave, Davos, and the rest of characters in the story. Many times throughout the play, slaves are allowed to engage in activity, such as inner and personal lives of their owners, that would not normally be seen with slaves in everyday society. This is a form of satire by Terence due to the unrealistic nature of events that occurs between slave sons citizens in his plays. 126. Emancipation. Freeing a slave was called manumission, which literally means sending out from the hand. The freeing of slave was a public ceremony, performed before some sort of public official, usually a judge. The owner touched the slave on the head with a staff and he was free to go. Simpler methods were sometimes used, usually with the owner proclaiming a slave's freedom in front of friends and family, or just a simple invitation to recline with the family at dinner. A felt cap called the pilus was given to the former slave as symbol of manumission. Slaves were freed for a variety of reasons, for a particularly good deed toward the slave's owner, or out of friendship or respect. Sometimes, a slave who had enough money could buy his freedom and the freedom of a fellow slave, frequently a spouse. However, few slaves had enough money to do so, and many slaves were not allowed to hold money. Slaves were also freed through testamentary manumission, by a provision in an owner's will at his death. In 2 BCE, Augustus restricted the number of slaves that could be freed at once from a single household, depending on the number of slaves belonging to the household. In a household with 3 to 10 slaves, no more than half could be freed. In a household with 10 to 30 slaves, no more than a third could be freed. In a household with 30 to 100 slaves, no more than a quarter could be freed. In a household with over 100 slaves, no more than 1/5 could be freed, and under no circumstances was it permitted to free more than 100 slaves at a time. 127. In 4 AD, another law prohibited the manumission of slaves younger than 30 years of age, with some exceptions. 128. Freedmen. The sight of a freedman was a more common one in Rome than other civilization. Former slaves became liberties / to their former patrons, patrons / a, and libertinus / to the rest of society. Both freedman and former patrons had mutual obligations to each other within the traditional patronage network, but freedmen also had the ability to network with other patrons as well. 129. Under their new social status, freedmen would take their former patron's name and start their own lineage. Men could vote and participate in politics, with some limitations. This included not being able to run for office, nor be admitted to the senatorial class. The children of former slaves, however, enjoyed the full privileges of Roman citizenship without restrictions. Cinmaria and 4th freedman Tiberius Claudius Craceros and 2 women, probably his wife and daughter. Some freedmen became very powerful. They held important roles in the Roman government. Those who were part of the imperial families often were the main functionaries in the imperial administration. Some rose to positions of great influence, such as Narcissus, a former slave of the Emperor Claudius. Other freedmen became wealthy. The brothers who owned House of the Vetii, one of the biggest and most magnificent houses in Pompeii, are read out to have been freedmen. 130. Most demonstrated their new economic status by building intricate tombs and monuments for themselves and their families. 131. Despite the fact many freedmen became rich and influential, they might still be looked down on by the traditional aristocracy as a vulgar nouveau-riche. Trimalchio, a character in the Satyricon, is a caricature of such a freedman. 132. See also slavery in ancient Greece, slavery in antiquity, history of slavery, slavery in the Eastern Roman Empire. References.
Good. Let's close it. And stop the video. Oh, my back. So it's 6 p.m. Yes, I'll just upload the video. and open my doors. Oh, I forgot. I need to write the title. I have to open again